my good friend Alex Paraskevas has been doing a lot of research on crisis management and resilience for a long time. I'm an amateur in comparison with all his experience, but I've learned from him for many years. And Alex, I've asked Alex to take us through with the introductory presentation, and then we'll have a conversation afterwards. So, Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dimitrios. I am a bit overwhelmed with all these things that you have said about me, renowned crisis management expert and all that. I'm far from being that. I'm just a person who comes from the industry, has become academic halfway through his life, after working in the industry for over 15 years, and I happen to have studied a few crises and worked with the industry for crisis management. So I don't consider myself an expert, and actually this virus and this crisis has proven that many of us experts are not the experts that we thought we were. Anyway, starting this second session, I have to say that everything that I wanted to say has already been said. And this is the consequence of having such a good panel in the first part of the conference, and they've said practically everything. So what I will say is just I will reiterate a few things that have been said in the process, and I will try to share my screen, but I don't know how I can do that now.
Alex, go to the bottom of the green button, it says share screen.
Okay, I'll do that, and share that. Okay, so it should be coming up.
Yes.
All right. Bear with me for a second.
Okay.
So, having lots of conversations, and like colleagues before, Marina and Carlos and Anna have said, and Maria have said, lots of webinars and yeah, many pretty valid points raised. So all I want to do is just to introduce you to COVID, or how it looks like. And what I was intending to do, but you have done it already, is to debunk three of the major myths that surround COVID. Okay, so the first one would be the myth of unprecedented crisis. The second myth is that we have it under control, and the third myth is that when it's all over, we will go back to business as usual. So I think that we have covered that quite extensively. It's not this word unprecedented bothers me a lot in terms of business in the tourism, perhaps planning or whatever. It is unprecedented, but in terms of business, it's not. The cause of this crisis is not unprecedented. So this is a newspaper head front page back in 1918, and what we see there is, it could easily be the front page of Telegraph or The Guardian today, or a few weeks ago. Influenza epidemic closes schools, churches, theaters, drugstores swamped with flu victims, and so on. And even the measures that were taken are exactly the same. Avoid crowds, walk to work, cover your cough and sneeze, and then other measures, schools closed, funeral ban is ordered, and so on. Even the anti-flu habit is wash your hands, take precautions. Influenza, stay out. We stay at home. Now we moved from staying at home to be alert, stay alert. So What is unprecedented is really the level of preparedness, both at national level, government level and all that, and also at business level. Even the businesses that have had some clue about risk management and crisis management did not see this coming. And this is, I think, because of the arrogance that we people in tourism have. Over the last decades, everything that we see is growth, 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 growth. And when you are at this stage, you think that you are invincible, that you don't have vulnerabilities, and that even if something happens in one part of the world, in another part, it will not, the other parts will recover, will benefit, or whatever. And it has been an ongoing scenario. We had terrorist attacks in one place. Other destinations have benefited because the shift of tourism to those destinations. I've been involved in pandemic planning with a couple of big hotel companies since 2008. Did this scenario come up? Yes, it came up, but it was dismissed immediately. All the planning was done with a view of pandemics that would be at the regional level and not at the global level. So that is unprecedented. And I think that our arrogance is unprecedented as tourism operators. And I think that now that COVID has slapped us on the face, it is time for us to reconsider. The second thing, I'll go very quickly with that, is that we have it under control. Already, Dimitrios showed you this table, and that's last night. We don't have it under control. If you notice here, we have new cases in the thousands coming up in major markets like the US, here in UK, and the deaths per million increase as we go. Even if the media play a certain tricky role, and Maria mentioned about the media at a certain point, I think, or maybe not, I might be mistaken. Here is a headline from BBC News. And this is yesterday, no, the day before yesterday. Italy death toll tops 30,000, highest in the EU. Now, probably you have noticed the table here, where Italy has 30,000 deaths, of course, but UK has 31,800. And this is how media is trying to probably influence public opinion in a very wrong way. The explanation that BBC gave is that it says in EU and we are not in the EU. Therefore, this doesn't count. Italy is still the #1 in terms of deaths in the EU. And the third thing that I wanted to show you is some statistics here, which show that we don't have it under control. These are the daily new cases. And although you see some fluctuations, on average, last week, this last 7 days, we had on average every day 5,000 new cases in UK. And we are one of the major markets here for the tourism in the Mediterranean and elsewhere. And also the deaths, although there is a trend, a downward trend, you will notice that we still are on an average 500 dead people every day in the last 7 days. You can see these troughs here, but these are the weekend. Probably people do not die on the weekend. They tend to die from Monday onwards. And this is why we have this fall here. So we should be looking also at history. When we are talking about starting all over again, let's learn something from history. And this is a totally different virus. You see the colors are different. And this is the Spanish influenza. So what do we see in the Spanish influenza? Back in 1918, it came in 3 waves. The first wave is here in terms of deaths, right? Followed by a second wave, which was 5 times more lethal, and a third wave, which was twice as lethal as the first wave. So when we are thinking about opening up and opening the beaches and all that, just let's consider that we might just be at this point here and think about what could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it's something that we need to consider. So definitely, we have moved from the seasonal disruption gradually to a more prolonged disruption for many countries. It's taking time. It's not just a couple of months. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced measures that will be implemented, and then some hospitality businesses may open in July. We will have travel restrictions still on. Yes, you are allowed to travel, but those people who are coming back or coming to UK, they will be in 14 days quarantine. So Dimitrios wanted to go to Portugal as soon as possible, but then he has to consider that when he comes back, he has to be quarantined for 14 days because he's coming from abroad, okay? So that's something that we need to consider. So before we move from this prolonged disruption where we are now to global recovery, there's going to be an uneven rebound, and everyone has mentioned that already before. This rebound will largely depend on spread of cases, on the state of economies, of national economies, on how supply chains will operate. And don't forget that so far we didn't have many issues with supply chains, but we might have a food crisis coming in fairly soon. And also the travel restrictions. And of course, it will depend on whether international meetings such as the Olympics or conferences and other events will start happening again. But there are three issues that perhaps were not mentioned so much in the first part of this discussion: politics, and what the role of politics will be in the near future. Because so far, we have all said, yes, our first issue is to protect people, protect the population in different nations and all that. And Maria said about the state intervention. But the question is how much the state can intervene, and how much can they intervene in different countries, and how much can they last before having to succumb to different pressures that, okay, now we need to restart the economy and we need to open no matter what. And we see this kind of approach already in the United States. So just think about that. A second issue that was not mentioned so much was, or mentioned at all, is the level of security in certain countries. Tourism destinations are vulnerable to security issues, especially when it comes to terrorist attacks and civil unrest. And we may have civil unrest. We had some early signs in the state of Georgia, I think, or was it in Michigan, where benevolent people yielding guns went to the governor's office to force him open the state again. And a third factor is geopolitics. And I think that this is more important and most important, and it's going to affect a lot tourism, because tourism will be played in the hands of politicians in order to form new alliances or in order to wage wars. We already see a rhetoric about the Chinese virus from the United States. Some other people are talking about compensations that need to be paid by China to the rest of the world. So that's just one example. And you talked very much about, and quite right, so about collaborations. Again, geopolitics are going to play a huge role in this. But the most important element and factor that will determine whether we will be able to actually reignite tourism is the treatment. If a treatment, either a cure or a vaccine, or both, will be discovered soon, will be invented soon, then we can have hope for a faster global recovery. So what will the new normal be? And I could not resist that because of Anna's painting at the back. So this is what it will be. if you notice Anna's painting, Anna's background, the painting was God and Adam. So that's how they will be touching each other in the future. I pretty much like this scenario for futures that was developed by Simon Mayer from the University of Surrey. And I'm working on this in studies that I'm doing with risk managers now when they are trying to envisage the future of hospitality and tourism and what they will do, what they will be doing. So there are two basically scenarios in terms of whether the response to the COVID will be centralized, so state-controlled, more state-controlled, or distributed, so more in the hands of the tourism businesses, and whether the guiding value would be economic principles or social principles. So is it about protection of life or is it about making money? I'm not quite sure what will happen. I hope we will not be in a state of barbarism here, where everybody will be doing whatever they like and only in order to make profit. I pretty much hope that we will be somewhere in this area with elements of a little bit of state capitalism and state socialism. But again, the thing is, how long will these states last, and how long can they support, and to what extent can they support tourism? I heard the finance minister, the minister of national economy, probably, I don't know, there are two different posts in Greece, Mr. Staikouras, who said that if we add up all the demands of the tourism sector, the bill cannot be footed. So, and I think that this stands for everyone. So, question is, are we going back to the old ways? And of course, it has been very well said that we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking as when we created them. That was said by Albert Einstein, but all the colleagues today have said the same thing. And we're talking about reigniting tourism. And I liked very much, and I have to say more, Marina's approach about reinvent or about the new ethos that Maria said. And actually, Maria, in her closing slide, she used the word reset. And I think that this is what we need. And when I say reset, it's okay, if we reignite the tourism as it currently is, we are getting back to the old habits, or we are starting with the old habits. And then if the machine, whatever machine we have, is a little bit oiled, then we will say, well, it works as it works. Why should we change it? Perhaps we should take a pause. And this is what I'm advising all my industry contacts. Take a pause and think about what you can do. Let's say no more that if it's not broken, why fix it? Let's understand that it is broken. It has been broken for years, but it was rolling on its own. And now that it is broken, let's try to fix it. How can we do that? Yes, very well said. Again, I cannot remember. I think Valeria talked about collaborations. Everybody talked about networks. Carlos talked about networks. We have to develop collaborative networks. Internally in destinations, all right, collaborative networks between hotels, between travel agents and hotels, between tour operators and service providers in general, restaurants, everyone in the value chain has to start working with each other. The purpose of that is to harvest as much learning as we can from people that we work with, but also from other destinations. And then also seek some expert advice. In other words, you know, as Marina said again, we are the experts, or you are the experts in tourism, planners, geographers. I'm just a person from the industry. So your advice needs to be sought and followed. Use the support networks that we have available. Whatever support networks governments are providing, let's take advantage of them, but collaboratively. not individually. And my basic premise is focus first on transformation and then on recovery. If we don't change, we will never be able to recover. So test solutions, it's a trial and test, trial and test and trial process. Let's see what works. Many things will not work. We are fighting against a virus that nobody knows exactly how it behaves. And in the new environment, we need to try different solutions. And if they work, then we have to share best practice. So, basic questions. Who will you collaborate with and how? We need to decide that at this stage. Who is going to work with us, for us, and how? And when I say who, I mean, we need to look at our staff. We need to look at the people who work with us in our businesses and reconsider what skills do we need? How are we going to hire them, recruit them and hire them, train them? Under what conditions are they going to work? Then who is going to travel and how are they going to travel, especially at these stages? We all say, yes, we are opening up and we are ready to receive tourists and all that. But again, the question that came up is, how are these people going to travel? And why would they travel to us? So we need to think about that. And how can we transform our business to sustainably meet and exceed all their needs? And when I say all of the above, the partners, the employees, the customers. And when I say sustainably, and forgive me, people from the sustainability field, I don't mean sustainably necessarily from an environmental or other perspective, is to make your business sustainable. How are you going to transform it in order to make it sustainable? And think again, who will determine your credibility? All those initiatives like the Clean and Safe that Carlos mentioned, the Limpo e Seguro approach, the certifications, the seals, the announcements by Hilton that Marina mentioned. She didn't mention explicitly, but I know that what she's talking about, that they are going to work with Mayo Clinic and Lysol in order to create new standards and all that. For me, this is, I wouldn't use the word now openly in such a forum, but not very convincing. What matters is that we have to really change the ways that we are approaching things, and cleanliness. I think that sanitation and cleanliness, yes, we need some advice about, how do we fight this virus specifically, but I don't need Hilton to tell me that we have 10 touch points that we are going to clean now, including your telephone, which you don't use, or the TV control in your room, or the surface areas and all that, because Mayo Clinic is going to give me the standards, and Lysol is going to give me the disinfectant. Before Lysol, you had Ecolab. It was working pretty well. Lysol is no more, or Dettol, same brand, different names, are more known to people now, so it makes more of an impression. And Mayo Clinic, really? Do we need Mayo Clinic to tell us that we need to change the bed sheets? And that we need to wipe the switches? Not necessarily, yes. So think again, who is going to determine your credibility? And your credibility is going to be determined by the customer and the tweets and the Instagram posts and the Facebook posts. So I'm going to leave that. Whether we like it or not, domestic tourism by driving is the primary source for this new restart. And then we deal with the rest. And trust must be the key. And I liked, again, that Maria mentioned that, I think, yes, in the end, or was it? Yeah, somebody mentioned it anyway. But what kind of trust? First of all, it has to be physical trust. In other words, make sure that the destination or the hotel or the restaurant is really safe, not only for the customer, but safe for the employees as well. The second one is emotional trust, trust that, travelers can travel to the destination and to the accommodation or use the restaurant without feeling guilty that they are doing something wrong. Okay, that everything that this company is actually taking care of its employees, not only of its customers, but of its employees and of the local community. Financial trust, that no one exploits nobody because of the coronavirus crisis. So we are not exploiting our clients, our customers. We are not exploiting, yes, just one more. We are not exploiting our employees. We are not exploiting our partners. And finally, digital trust, because we are moving very much into a non-contact IT digital service. So people have to trust that their transactions, their information, and their personal data are secure and private. So all in all, we talked about responsible tourists. Let's make sure that we protect our destination and we don't turn them like this. Thank you very much. And sorry for taking so long.
I think it was extremely interesting, and I think you brought both macro and micro issues together, and I really like this trust framework at the end, where you bring everything together. The main difficulty will be, of course, that a lot of people are so desperate to restart tourism because their livelihood really is desperate on that. And as you know, I've been in many conversations around the world where I'm trying to kind of make people think about the conditions under which they should open tourism, and rather than rush into it. And I think you provide the full support to that. Thank you so much.
Also, one more point is the travel bubbles that are being discussed and the collaborations that we need to talk a little bit more about them in the discussion later. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there are several issues about facilitation, like travel insurance and travel advisories and a whole range of other things that we'll need to be looking at.